Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of AIHR Live. My name is Nelly Valinden, and I am your host today. I hope everyone is doing well. With me here today, as you can see, is Suzanne Lucas, also known as the Evil HR Lady. Hi, Suzanne.
Hi.
How are you?
I am splendid and super happy to be here.
I am super happy to have you. I remember how much fun we had last time, so I'm very much looking forward to our conversation today.
Me too.
Before we get started, please don't hesitate to say hi to us in the comments on LinkedIn and let us know where you are watching from today, because we really appreciate it. Now, today's conversation is going to be about lessons that AIHR can learn from 2020. We'll also talk about skills that are going to be important for HR professionals moving forward. And we'll take a look at what you can do to start preparing for 2021. Now, Suzanne and I will be talking about that for about 20 minutes. And then we have 15 minutes to answer as many of your questions as possible. That means do not hesitate to ask your questions in the comments. Now, let me give you a proper introduction, Suzanne, because I haven't done that yet. So, Suzanne has extensive experience working in HR in various roles, and about 12 years ago, she became the Evil HR Lady, and as such, she has written countless articles on her blog, evilhrlady.org. If you haven't subscribed to the blog yet, I highly recommend you do so. And on her blog, she writes about topics such as career growth, managing people, managing difficult issues, and she also shares ideas for small businesses. Also, she gives direct advice to people with work problems, and she is very good at explaining complex labor issues in a fun way. Now, Suzanne, if I forgot anything, please don't hesitate to add. And then we lost Suzanne, but I'm sure that she'll come back in a second. So in the meantime, if you already have any questions that you like us to talk about later on, do not hesitate to share them in the comments. And Suzanne is back already. Hi again, Suzanne. No, but it's good to have you back. And I finished your introduction. So
okay, good. You didn't tell them all those secrets about me, did you?
I did not. So, yeah, I mean, we can just start with the questions that that I'd like to ask you, and I'd like to start with a bit of a personal one, actually, Suzanne, because I'm super curious. What is the most important lesson that you have learned yourself from 2020?
Well, the thing that I learned about me is, if you had asked me like in February of 2020, I would have said, oh, I am a total introvert. I would be happy to sit at home all the time. And that turns out it is a lie.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize until everything shut down how much I actually need other people. I didn't realize how much of my day was spent out and about and meeting face to face with people and doing things with friends and all of those things. I think I still lean a little bit more towards introversion than extroversion, but I think I'm just the kind of introvert who really likes people but doesn't like cocktail parties. You know, that type of standing around talking with strangers and being like, hi, that I don't like. And I always saw that as the extroverts that like that. And then I didn't. But I really learned that I need people in my life. And I think I'm not the only one that learned that. That, oh my gosh, when I'm trapped in my apartment for days and weeks on end, kind of went a little bonkers.
Yes. I hear you. And I think indeed it's the same for a lot of us. And I also think that this is something that's actually been this has actually been increased by the fact that so many of us were forced to, of course, start working from home, and then of course you see a lot less people than you did before. So yeah, I definitely hear what you're saying. Which then gets me to HR. And this year, I mean, we were at the end of 2020. It's November. Next week will be in December. And so this is always a moment where it's nice to look back at the year, even though this year was crazy, of course. And yeah, perhaps see if there's some lessons that we can learn from 2020, especially when it comes to HR. So quite curious to hear your thoughts on that.
There's so many things that we've learned in HR this year. I mean, that's crazy. And one of those things does go back to the work from home, because everybody said the one benefit that I want the most in the whole world is to work from home.
Yeah.
And some people have been thrilled. Some people really have been. And some businesses have closed their offices completely. They never plan to go back. Other people have learned that, oh my goodness, I love the office. I didn't realize. And I think it goes with that personal interaction again. And I think this kind of gives us this mind switch in HR, as for years and years and years, we've been fighting with business leaders to be like, look, if a job can be done from home, there's no reason it shouldn't be done from home, and pushing for that. And now we've got to take a step back and say, but is that best for our people? And if it's not best for our people, then it's not best for our business, because what we need is happy people. And like I said, some people are just thrilled and would happily never go back to the office. But other people have learned, okay, working at home all of the time is not for me. And you're going to see some businesses have to make adjustments the other way around. Now, I think some of them jumped the gun too quickly when they're like, oh, look, everybody can work at home, so we'll just stop paying our rent. We don't have to do these buildings. We don't need the infrastructure. We'll save a fortune. And right now that's fine. But theoretically, if this vaccine works and we can all get back to normal life, I think we're going to see people opening offices again. And this is something where HR really needs, again, to advocate for the people. And we need to really learn to do that I mean, that's what we've been doing all year, is advocating for people. And that's something that I've really seen happen a lot. So many people complain that HR just represents management, blah, blah, blah. But I've really seen in the behind the scenes thing how much HR is concerned about their people. And that's a great thing to see.
Absolutely. So I think that we can see as a first thing, indeed, although that is a very large one, advocating for people. But this was more specifically, I think, about people's individual needs in terms of where they like to work best. And that can either be at home, it can be at the office, it can be actually a hybrid form where people might want to come into the office a few days a week, they might want to work from home a few days a week. But so, yeah, I think you wanted to say something, by the way.
Yeah, I just think the hybrid is actually my favorite way to do it. And I think a lot of people really like that too. And I think this is something that HR is really looking at and saying, okay, we've tried this experiment. Where did it work? Where did it fail? Now let's work together to find the best solution for our people and our business. And what you do in your business may be different than what I do in my business. And that's okay.
Absolutely. I think another interesting topic when we look at this year, and also very relevant and linked once again to the fact that so many have been forced to work remotely, is about how do you engage people in this situation? What can you say about that? What have you seen?
It's been a really interesting challenge, because we had to switch from the face-to-face to the infamous Zoom meetings. And at first we were all like, why are Zoom meetings so exhausting?
Yes.
And And we learned through this, and several psychologists wrote these articles about it, that Zoom gives us a very different feeling than face-to-face meetings do. And one of the reasons is that we're constantly staring at our own face. Whereas when you're in a meeting, you're not. And right after the shutdown was lifted in Switzerland this summer, I had a face-to-face meeting in a building I'd never been into. I walk into the room. There was with two other people, so there was 3 of us. The table sat 12 so that we could be properly socially distanced. I sat down, and after I sat down, I noticed I was sitting right across from a mirror, and there I had to sit and stare at my face for the whole meeting, just like I was on Zoom. And I was like, this is really fun. But we also learned that because we were doing everything from home, we were doing our business meetings from home. We were getting together with our friends on Zoom from home. We were talking to our parents on Zoom, and we were all doing it in the same chair in front of the same computer. And it became very draining because there was no break. Yes, I'm now talking with a friend and not my boss, but I'm doing it the exact same way I did it before. And that turns out to be stressful.
Definitely.
So we learned a lot about remote meetings and how to handle things better. We also learned that you don't have to be face-to-face for everything, that it's okay to turn off your camera from time to time. And then there's been, of course, some very famous mishaps on Zoom that we've all heard about. That's a different topic.
It's a different topic indeed. I want to talk about managers for a bit, because of course this whole year has changed a lot for many people, but I think also for managers, because the way they were managing their teams before, well, changed a lot, sometimes almost overnight. So what do you think managers have learned this year? Obviously a lot, but
the word agility has always been thrown around for the last few years. Is your business agile? And different software companies are like, we'll make your business agile. And all of a sudden, overnight, we went from, oh, there's this new disease in China to, oh my gosh, we are shutting down our entire country in a matter of a couple of months. And it really went fast. And managers had to really learn what it meant to be agile. Agility was no longer something that a software gave you. And it was no longer these superficial things of, look, I can take on new roles. It was the entire business model has to change right now. You saw at the beginning of the pandemic, some clothing manufacturers switched in a matter of days from making clothing to making masks. That's agility. You saw various automobile manufacturers switch from making cars to making respirators. That's agility. And that's really an example of true agility. Like, oh, we're going to change this process that's what we called agility before. Now we've seen agility, and agility is, turning on a dime. And, one of the things that just amazes me is how in a matter of days, I started to see plexiglass appear everywhere. And I'm like, where did they get this? I mean, that was my question as an HR person. I'm like, what company out there is now making a fortune? But it wasn't just one company. It had to have been many that stopped whatever it was they were doing and just changed everything. And I live in an apartment. It's an old, very large house. And the bottom floor is a printing company. They have a huge print thing. And I assumed they would be a non-essential business, and I was surprised when everything shut down and they were still at work. I'm like, why are they coming in, printing? Because I'm thinking like flyers. Well, suddenly there needed to be signs all over, and they were working a lot. And I thought, how many businesses out there do I have no idea about that really this is agility, and this is what managers learned. And it was sink or swim here. There was no time for a learning curve.
No.
None. Yeah. You do it or your business is toast. And those businesses that did it, I mean, those plexiglass manufacturers, if we can ever travel again, they're going to have great vacations.
Yeah, definitely. So before I go to my next question, I'm going to turn to you, our audience, for a minute, because if there are any lessons that you in HR have learned this year that you would like to share, because we like to make this LinkedIn Live as interactive as possible, please do share them with us in the comments. And then perhaps Suzanne and I can talk about a few of them later on. Now, Suzanne, we are going from lessons to skills, because of course the lessons that we've learned this year, they will also have an impact on certain skills. There are certain things that have become more important and perhaps other things that have become less important. So if we talk about skills for a minute, what do you think are going to become or are already important skills for HR professionals?
The number one skill that I saw during 2020 was the skill of collaboration. And so many human resources professionals work in small businesses where they are an HR department of 1 or 2. And suddenly everything changed, and every country had their own rules. Every region had their own rules, and the rules did not stay the same. And they changed all of the time. And I run a Facebook group for HR professionals called Evil HR Lady. And we have 5,000 people on there, most of whom are HR professionals, some other people too, but mostly HR professionals. And a lot of them are HR departments of 1 and 2. And so they were alone in their offices, but they collaborated like a team. Mm-hmm. And just the information going back and forth. This is the best practice. How did you implement this rule? What do you think of that? And I had employment attorneys jumping in and giving free advice. I mean, when lawyers are handing out free advice, that was like, wow. There were several employment attorneys who I could tag on Facebook, and they would hop in and they would say, this, and this is what you need to do. It was this great collaboration. And it wasn't I figured it out, so I'm going to solve my business's problems, and the rest of you can just figure it out yourself. It was, I figured this out. Let me tell you how I did. Let me help you in your business. And this collaboration skill, it was amazing to watch. I'm just, if people want to complain about HR, and there's plenty of reasons to complain about them, they should come over to my Facebook group and just read. Go back to March and April and read, and you will see people that were doing their absolute best to work with one another. And it was just really this great example of collaboration. And that is a skill that was polished this year, and I think is going to be critical going forward, because the changes aren't stopping. No. It's not like, oh, we figured this out.
No, and I think what's more is that we simply don't know what kind of problems that we'll be facing, and it's very likely that there will be problems that we haven't faced before, which means that I don't know the answer to them. You probably don't know the answer to them, and I do believe that collaboration and working together and being honest and saying, I don't know either, but let's work together and see what we can do, see what we can try, fail, perhaps try again. I think that is something that will remain very important also next year.
I think so too. I think it's one of the top skills for HR.
Yeah, beautiful. Also really beautiful. I think I'm going to have a read at the Facebook group because it sounds actually super interesting to see all these examples that you've seen in March and April.
Yeah, it was amazing. It continues to be amazing. It continues to be amazing.
Fantastic. Okay. I see that there are some questions coming in already from you watching. So thank you very much for those. I have one more question myself for Suzanne, and after that, we'll have time to answer your questions. So do not hesitate if there's anything you'd like to share with us. Suzanne, so the last question that I have is also going to be about looking ahead at 2021, because it is, after all, almost the end of 2020.
Yay!
So, yeah, I think everybody will be very pleased to leave this year behind us as soon as possible.
Yes,
you know, this is a time where people also start to prepare for next year. They try to look ahead and they try to prepare. I can imagine that being a little bit more complicated than usual this year. But what do you think that HR can start doing right now to prepare for 2021?
Well, we need to keep doing what we've been doing, which is being willing to change on a dime. And that's what we have been doing. But I really think for 2021, we need to prepare our backbones to stand up to senior management, because there's going to be some tough things that are coming. And one of those things that is coming is this vaccine. And we need to look out for our employees and for our business. And that may mean standing up to an executive and saying, no, you cannot force everyone to get this vaccine. Or if you're in healthcare, it may be saying, look, we need to implement this policy. This is what, the medical people have advised. And I'm not advising anybody. I'm not a healthcare person. I'm just saying this is coming up. And we need to be prepared to whatever the individual governments say, whatever the health authorities say. It's possible. Qantas Airlines already said that they're going to require people to have the vaccine to fly. Then they kind of walked it back a little, but they said it first. So we have one business saying this. So now you live in Australia and you need to travel somewhere else on a business thing. Now you're required to get it to fly on this airline. How does that work? Is it the employer forcing you? I mean, these are questions that we're working on right now. And the problem is we don't have answers from the governments yet. No government that I'm aware of has issued a statement saying, we will require it, we will not. We don't know, but it's going to fall on HR's lap, because we're the one that deal with the people. We're going to be the ones working with the employment lawyers to interpret the regulations. We're going to be the ones working with the risk assessment people to determine, is this something that our employees need? Are we working with a high-risk population? Are we not working with a high-risk population? And that can vary from things to things. One of the examples I give in my webinars, I do one for banks, and banks can have branches all over with very different populations. There may be a branch by the university where nobody over 30 enters into the building ever. So you're only dealing with a low risk population, whereas another branch could be located across the street from a retirement home and no one under 70 ever enters the building. So when you're making decisions, the branch that's by the retirement home, they're dealing with a high risk population every day. The branch that's by the university is dealing with a low risk population every day. Do you make one policy for the whole company, or do you say, this depends? These are questions, and these are falling on HR's lap. And so my advice to HR people is to start thinking about these really hard things and get our backbones stiffened ready to go to battle, because there's going to be battles. And I don't know which side you should be on yet. I don't have any idea. But there's going to be battles, and we need to look out for our employees one way or the other.
Yeah, I mean, I think that will remain the number one thing, right?
Yeah. I think that's the thing. And in 2020, I think for the most part, HR has really looked out for their employees, but it's going to be even more so in 2021.
Okay, so Suzanne, thank you for that. Those were my questions. And now we are going to, I think, an even more exciting part where we will be answering the questions coming from you. So I have a first one here coming from Luis Antonio Martinez Celestino. And the question is, how have the challenges of 2020 affected onboarding new employees? Can you tell us something about that?
Oh my goodness. It has affected the onboarding of new employees a lot. In the United States, for instance, in order to work, you have to show your identification. And with having businesses closed and people working remotely, everybody had to change their policies, and the government allowed an exception to be able to view people's IDs over video conference instead of face-to-face. So that was the first thing, was a technology thing. And then to onboard employees in a situation where everybody is new at what you're doing, you may be doing the exact same job, but suddenly you're working from home and you're trying to train a new person who's never worked for your business, and you've got to do it remotely. That's really tough. You can't really just say, oh, shadow Bob, sit next to him. No. Because somehow having somebody sitting in your cube is very different than, Bob, turn on your camera, and the new guy will turn on his camera, and he'll just kind of look over, stare at you all day. That's very, very different. So we had to change how we did training and maybe implement some more formal training procedures. And then in organizations where you were working on site, stores, for instance, suddenly you've got new procedures that the seasoned employees are still dealing with. And they're trying to learn it while you're training the new person. And it's become it was very, very difficult. These onboarding things that we knew how to do, suddenly we didn't know how to do them anymore.
Yeah, thank you. Let me see. I have another question here coming from Aaron Lund. It's a bit of a long one, so okay, here goes. It's also about onboarding. They've also been struggling with the new concept of onboarding. They always had a full day at the office with information and fun games, and they are now thinking of how can we do this more online or in a different way. How are you thinking about that, Suzanne?
I really, the online thing has to be a process right now. And there's a lot of tools out there. Where Neely and I initially met was at Unleash, which is an HR tech conference. So we go back on the HR tech side of things. There are tools out there for that, to do these kinds of things, but you have to approach it from a different way. And I think the process needs to be somewhat more formal, because when you're not face-to-face, when you're together, there's a lot of body language. There's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, and we can all take a break and stretch our legs and, oh, look, we have treats for everybody. And there's small talk. When you're all on a Zoom meeting, it's really hard to have small talk when only one person can speak at a time. Nobody knows anybody else there. It's just like awkwardness for everyone. So you need a really more structured onboarding program, but it also needs to be really interactive, or people become incredibly bored. One of my favorite tools is an app called Kahoot, where
Yes.
Have you used it?
Yes, we do at AIHR.
Yeah, it's fantastic because it allows everybody to answer every question. They don't have to use their real name. So,
Which
the
can be
last
quite fun.
I had Darth Vader and Kylo Ren, and then I had Tamara. I'm like, I wonder who Tamara is. Everybody had these fake names except for one person. But that allows you to guess at an answer. And those things are kind of important. It keeps those awkwardness away. It's a great tool for onboarding. Because you can ask questions like, after you've talked about the company's healthcare plan, you put up a question about it and then see how many people got it right. It not only gives people to answer freely without fear of being branded as stupid, you also get to see really fast if your information got through. It's a great feedback tool. I love it. I love it.
Yeah. And depending on the feedback, it then allows you to perhaps change the way that you provide certain information, of course.
Absolutely. Yeah. It gives you this real opportunity.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. So I have another question here coming from Jochen Janssens. And so what he said is, a challenge we stumbled upon was the fact that some of our employees struggled with motivation while working from home. These employees pointed out that they missed the facilitating effect of socializing on the job. Do you have any tips for this? I think this is a common struggle, by the way, that people's motivation has dropped as the whole confinement lasted longer.
Yes. I mean, this is something that really has been a problem because I'm someone, I've actually worked from home exclusively for 11 years. And before that, I worked off and on from home for 5 years before that. So I'm really an expert at working at home. But it's not something that everybody thrives on. And as I said at the beginning, apparently I spent a lot of time not at home and I didn't notice until I couldn't leave. But that motivation can become very hard because even for me, who is a seasoned work at home person, I also got up in the morning, sent my kids to school, and then sat down at my desk. And suddenly my kids were sitting right there. And I was supposed to make sure that they were logged on to their school. And if you've ever tried to get an 11-year-old boy to do schoolwork online when it's just so easy to click over to YouTube, that was really unpleasant. And a lot of people also, I said, I live in an apartment. We don't have like spare offices. If you live in a huge mansion and everyone's got their own room, it's been, great. Here is my office. You have people working at the kitchen table. You have people working at the couch. If you have multiple adults living at home, your spouse or your roommates or whatever, you're in a 1-bedroom apartment. Where are you going? You've got 2 kids in a 85 meter square apartment. Everybody's at home. What you doing? It's really hard. And I think the first thing in helping people to be motivating is acknowledging that it's hard. They don't need another pep talk of you are so blessed to have a job while other people lost their jobs. And we all know that. And it's okay to struggle even with other people are struggling more. It's not like a finite pie. And because your neighbors are struggling more, there's no struggle left for you. And I think acknowledging it is really something first. And then the second is evaluating if what I'm doing is not working, what do we need to change? At the beginning and still going on somewhat, a lot of managers were so paranoid at people working from home. They wanted to put keystroke monitoring software on. They wanted everybody to keep their cameras on all of the time so that we know you're working. And this was a battle that HR fought in many companies to say, like, look, you need to look at the end product and not at how many keystrokes are they making? Are they getting up and walking out of the room? And, you know, like I said, for people with kids, you just couldn't put in 8 straight hours sitting at your desk. And businesses needed to make adjustments for that. So keep all of that in mind. And I would ask your employees what they need in terms of help, because the answer is going to be different for a lot of people. Somebody may say, look, I just need the flexibility to put in 2 or 3 hours in the morning, 2 or 3 hours in the afternoon, and then finish out my day after the kids are in bed at 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
And we need to be able to say, okay, is that possible? And with some jobs, it's not. You know, if you're trying to run a call center, you need someone on the phone lines during specific hours. But if you're an accountant, do you really have to have everybody working the precise same hours? Probably not. So you're going to find some people that are really in need of flexibility. Other people, they need just recognition that what they're doing is okay. And, you know, that it seems so formal when I have to like call you up and say, hey, Neely, just wanted to let you know, great job. But if we pass each other in the hall and I say, oh my gosh, great job today, that's really casual and normal. But like, I'm going to pick up the phone and call my employee and say, you're doing a great job. It seems so awkward.
Yeah.
But we need to be able to do that. And then another thing is a lot of communications went electronic, and I live to text. Like, I think text messaging is like the best invention ever. But there is a different, you can't do tone. You can't emphasize sarcasm. And if someone's stressed out, they can take it the wrong way so much more easily than face-to-face communication. Yeah. And so you may find out that your employees are stressed out because your jokes you're sending them, your like little sarcastic comments that you always made, those sent on an instant messenger when everybody is stressed out are no longer funny. And you may not realize it. And it's not because you're a bad person. It's just that the circumstances changed.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Okay, I think we're going to get to a few last questions and then we have to wrap up. I think this one is a bit following the question before. It's coming from Gel at Pinax. And the question is, how do you deal with employees suffering mental health breakdowns remotely? What is the best way to evaluate employee mental health during the pandemic? I think this is a very relevant question too.
This is a relevant question. Mental health is always a big problem that HR faces. And during the pandemic, it's been really, really hard. My niece is actually a psychologist, and she was just telling us how stressful it is that she spends all of her day helping people through their pandemic stress, whereas she's feeling pandemic stress as well. But this is her job and she does it well. But everybody's on this. And the first thing is HR needs to remember that we're not trained and licensed therapists. And it's not our job to fix anybody. It's our job to direct people to the right people. If you have an employee assistance program, this is the time to send that phone number out to assure people that they will be able to receive confidential help, that you will never find out that they called or why they called. Let them know that that is available to them. If you see somebody struggling, you can have that conversation of, hey, I see that you're struggling. What can I do to help you? And if the answer is, I'm really, really stressed out, and they give you this whole laundry list, you need to refocus the conversation into what can we do at work to help you out. And you also need to be flexible with people when they do say things like, I can't work from home and homeschool my children. and, you know, wash my hands 47 times a day because I'm so paranoid about this. And wearing a mask makes me like angry, which for me, I start to feel like, you know, when I have my mask on for too long, and it's just how I feel. And we need to listen to those things and do our best to find business related solutions without playing therapist. We need to make sure that our employees know we support them in getting the help that they need. We won't look down on them if they say, look, I can't be to that meeting at 2:00 on Tuesday. I have an appointment with my therapist. Our response to be, that's fantastic. You know, when you get back, or when can we reschedule the meeting? Never say, oh my gosh, you're seeing a therapist?
Yeah.
Can you not deal with this? Are you stressed? That's not what we need. It's not what your employees need. The answer is, that's fantastic. I'm really glad. Or even better, that's fantastic. My therapy appointment is on Wednesday. Just, you know, it needs to be out in the open. Nobody ever says, oh my gosh, you're going to the orthopedic surgeon again? It's like, we accept that if your leg is broken, you may need several appointments. But we don't accept that if you're stressed out, you're having difficulty handling this global pandemic, that you may need to take time out for therapy. And that's something that we can really do, is just be supportive. But I do really want to emphasize that we don't play therapists, because we are not therapists and we are not licensed. And it's very important that we don't step over that boundary.
Yeah. Yeah, agree. All right. I have 2 more questions, but let's see how much time we've got left after the first one. So they're both about skills, and I think they are actually a bit similar. So the first one is from Moses Sabushi, and it's which skills are needed to be more effective with remote recruitment. And the other one, I'm going to throw it in at the same time, is from Vernon Bain. And the question is, what technical or software skills are needed for remote work? So
skills are so important right now. And the technical skills for remote work is really going to vary depending on what kind of business you do.
Yeah.
But we all need to know how to use video conferencing software. We all need to understand how whatever your business's method of instant messaging is, whether it be a special app or just, you know, part of your email application, or if you're using Slack or whatever, we need to be able to understand those things. The communication skills are really important because we're not face-to-face. And there's a lot of things that are more difficult to do communication-wise when we're not face-to-face. You know, I live in Switzerland. My native language is English, but I teach classes in German, and I didn't have any problem when we were face-to-face. I could understand everything my students said, no problem. Now that we're meeting online, oh my goodness, I can't get it as well. It's so much harder. And I mean, here at Neely, I don't think English is your native language.
No.
And you probably find it easier face-to-face.
Yes.
Than over video or over phone. And I was really surprised at the difference that it makes face-to-face. And I'm like, I used to understand you, and now I don't. Yeah. And because our businesses are so global right now, it's highly possible that one or more of your coworkers isn't speaking, or you are not speaking your native language. And written communication and video conferencing is harder, not in your native language. So I really think that's something that we need to be aware of. But as far as skills, you know, for recruiters, I think one of those big things, again, goes back to the agility, to be able to change that backbone, to stand up to hiring managers and being like, you're not going to find this unicorn person that you're looking for. Or this is the skills that we need. Or something that I keep seeing a lot of is businesses saying, this is a remote job, and then not mentioning that it's only a remote job until the pandemic ends. So recruiters really need to get that information out of the hiring managers' mouths, so that when they are recruiting, they're recruiting accurately, because people will be upset if you hire them for a remote position that in 6 months or sooner, knock on wood, please let it be sooner, that they're expected to come into the office, and you'll lose people. So really those communication skills are those top things. And if we can count knowledge as a skill, we say knowledge, skills, and ability, but because all of the rules have changed so often this past year, keeping up on what those rules are is a really critical skill. And I advise businesses to have a COVID point person whose job it is every day to check your health ministry or whatever your country's health authority's website. What changed? What thing do we need to implement? What changes do we need to make? Because that knowledge is so important.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Suzanne. Unfortunately, that brings us to the end of this episode, and we have to wrap up. So let me thank you for yet another super nice conversation with a lot of interesting insights. So thank you very much, Suzanne.
Thank you so much for having me.
And I mean, let's do it again next year.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So thank you very much, and bye.
Bye.
Now, from me to you, our audience today, thank you so much for joining us as well. Thank you for all your fantastic questions. If you are interested in expanding or strengthening your HR skill set to face those challenges that Suzanne and I talked about today, then you might want to take a look at our Black Friday sale that we have on. So you can head over to aihr.com/black-friday. That is aihr.com/black-friday to get a 25% off coupon for our entire course catalog. You can find the link that we will share in the comments on LinkedIn, and head over to aihr.com and invest in something meaningful this Black Friday. Thank you so much once again for joining us today. Stay safe, and I see you soon for a new episode of AIHR Live. Thank you and goodbye.